Hi, I wanted to go through the group PowerPoint presentation and show you the support work that there is too. So initially there's a vocational scenario which says you have started your new placement with a health and social care wraparound organization, Mind Health Oasis, which is new to the community. You've been asked to provide a presentation within your team of the information and the training that the employees will need to undergo before they can be found work within the community. The type of settings they provide employees for are nurses for hospitals, managers for nurseries, support workers for supported living, social workers, midwives in GP surgeries, care assistants in nursing homes. Your task is to create a group PowerPoint presentation, which you would be able to use as training for prospective employees before they enter the workplace regarding communication. You will need to be able to explain the use of communication as well as backing it up with the theories behind it. You will further have to explain the term of confidentiality and summarize the legislation that relates to communication in health and or social care sector. So one thing to be clear about is that all of these criteria, the D1, D2, D3, D4, will need to be covered with your D5 being the reference. For this, you will need to explain the use of communication in health and social care settings. This means you will need to provide information to explain types of communication used in health and social care settings, a range of people who need to communicate between each other, and different reasons for communicating in health and social care settings. That is your D1 1.1. For this, you will need to refer to at least 6 of the following with particular references to health and social care settings. This means all the things that are in here, use of communication, and you've got all of these, communication between individuals and others. Now remember, the semicolon here is where your first point is. So this means that is your first point up to here. Then inform is your second point. Then guide is your third. Offer reassurance is fourth, and so on. Looking at your assignment support sheet, what I suggest you do is when you have it explained the use of communication in health and social care settings, all of those have been placed for you here. And this means that 4 of them are to be done by one person, then a further 4 needs to be done by the second person, further 4 by third person, and further 4 needs to be done by the fourth person. That way you should be able to cover all of the ground that you need to. The second part is your D2 2.1. It says you will need to outline the theories of communication, which are Argyll's stages of communication of the communication cycle and Tuckman's stages of group interaction. Now the suggestion is that you have your 4 individuals. One person looks at Argyll's stages of communication cycle with references, another person looks at Tuckman's stages of group interaction with references, then the third person has the ability to create some examples of Argyll's stages of communication, 2 of them, and refers to how these stages of communication actually work within the healthcare setting or the social care setting. And the fourth person does exactly the same thing except for Tuckman's stages of group interaction with references. They talk about how it is relevant to the healthcare and social care setting and 2 examples of the stages of group interaction. This way you have 4 individuals who cover all of the parts with nobody having to do more than another individual and everybody doing their part. So you've got one person explaining it, another person explaining it with the outlines, the third person and the fourth person providing your relevance to healthcare settings and relevance to social care settings, and then they also talk about giving some specific examples which are related to healthcare and social care settings. The next D asks you to say you will need to explain the meaning of the term confidentiality. Here you will need to provide information that defines the term confidentiality, that shows an accurate understanding of the term and relates to the context of health and social care. For this, it makes sense to have one individual provide the explanation of the term of confidentiality, and then the rest of the 3 individuals to provide one example that is related to healthcare setting, one example that is related to social care setting. The last criteria to cover says you will need to summarize legislation, policies, procedures, and codes of practice relating to the management of information. Here the information must focus on the management of information and summarize relevant legislation, more than one relevant policy, more than one relevant procedure, and more than one relevant code of practice. This means that you have a number of different legislation, policies, and procedures and codes of practice that have been placed here, and you will need to cover them. Let's see how the support material helps you to decide on how you would do that. The support material says that because you have 4 individuals, I suggest that each of the 4 individuals looks at one piece of legislation, then relates it to a policy and a procedure in the healthcare and social care setting, and then further looks at a code of practice for themselves. This means that everybody will have some information that they will be able to provide and be able to understand and have knowledge of, which will be really helpful for them when you're writing your assignments further on as time goes on, including your external task. And finally, no assignment is ever complete in the cash course without showing of references to support your material. So this means that to be able to meet it, as I suggested, you find the references for each of the sections that I had talked about, and it says show evidence of reading or use of sources. There should be evidence of learners reading or use of sources. Learners must use a minimum of 2 traceable references to support the discussion. Now, I would suggest you don't stick to the bare minimum of 2, but you do what I've suggested in the assignment suggestion material to be able to ensure that you have enough to be able to cover, plus it is good for your ability to progress and develop. So that will be how you write up your assignment 1, which is your group PowerPoint presentation that you will be doing. I suggest you find 3 other individuals that you'll be able to work with and start dividing up each of the sections that you need to.